Listen.
Audio check. We're doing an audio check. Audio check. All right. We're doing an audio check. I'm sure that's annoying, but that's kind of the way I have to do things. Let's see here. Where are we starting? Oh, I'm reloading all of these. I don't really want to be reloading all of these. Give me a second. Audio check. All right. We're doing an audio check. I'm sure that's annoying, but that's... And I will mute that. All right. There we go. We're going. We're going to make it happen. All right. So we're chilling. How's everybody doing? Let me know. Even if you're catching this after the fact, I'd love to hear how things are going. I am snowed in. I got like 4 or 5 inches of snow at my house. So we've been sitting tight at the house, and we're just going to go back over the week, basically. And I do this because part of the goal for my podcast is always around the idea of creating dialogue. And I always feel like there's more to be said. I always feel like there's something that could have been said that just you're limited in like 45 minutes. And that's just the way it is. So I always feel like I go through a podcast kind of recording, and there's always more to be said. So I've enjoyed the live streams. I've enjoyed hanging out way more than I thought. I thought that live streaming would be kind of nerve wracking, but in the end, I think I can kind of like just chill out a little bit and let it be what it is. Like, you know, when your lips get chapped and you need to put on some chapstick in the middle of what you're saying, you just do that because you're live streaming, and that's just the way it is. So welcome in. Hopefully that's not annoying. Okay, so is like sort of narcissistic as that is to just see a bunch of my own face. Let me see here. Actually, I think, well, yeah, I want to start the recap. I actually want to start with the most current things first, and then go back. And so what that is this John Lennox video on transhumanism. And I don't know that I have a ton. That's lovely right there. I don't know that I have a ton to say about it, because the whole transhumanist movement seems to me to be sort of an obvious recreation of the Tower of Babel. But that's just me. Maybe there's more to it. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I mean, the idea that we could become gods. I mean, that's just Genesis. It's Genesis chapter 3, kind of mulled over, kind of recreated. Now, I did think that John Lennox just does a great job. In particular, he has a couple of lines in this interview that I thought were just brilliant. And the one where he just basically says, yeah, the transhumanist quest for immortality is just late. It's just too late. It's been accomplished by the finished work of Christ. And that to me was just like, yeah, okay. I really have grown fond of John Lennox, and it was interesting to me, and this is one of the things that I kind of left on the cutting room floor that I didn't get into the podcast, was just a little bit more of tying John Lennox to C.S. Lewis, because this is a little bit weird. There's like I don't know how else to do this. Let's see. Yeah, I'll just wait until I get an ad, and then we can. I'm trying to cruise through and show clips of the scenes in the podcast, but it's not working out so well. And I don't have YouTube Premium, so I get the ads every once in a while. So there's a few things on the cutting room floor from this. As weird as it is, an experience it is for me to sort of be looking at myself. This is the best way for me to maybe remember. I just need to not look over here at my OBS and see myself talking to myself, which is sort of freaking me out. So, where was I? John Lennox and C.S. Lewis. He was a student of C.S. Lewis's, and I didn't really major on that. I mean, he quoted Lewis because the transhumanist, this is the other thing I thought was great, is the transhumanist kind of quest is very in line with some of the things that Lewis said in The Abolition of Man. And what did he say? The chief triumph of humanity will be the abolition of man. And it seems to me that if you can just convince humans that they can become God, then humanity will self-destruct. And what better of a plan than that? And so, as though I did cover the Doug Wilson, I shared a clip with this Doug Wilson lecture on That Hideous Strength. The relationship, I think, between John Lennox and C.S. Lewis is more than I realized. And I really think that he sort of, in that interview, operated kind of in the spirit of C.S. Lewis. I think he did a really good job of just being sort of winsome, humorous, ironic. And I thought that was really good. So, so bravo to John Lennox. And so what I actually wanted to do is share this quote from C.S. Lewis. It's from That Hideous Strength. Now, of course, did I lose it? And this didn't make it in either. But it's right there. And a lot of people are realizing that hideous strength is very timely. That's not quite what I want. Okay, hold on. Give me a second on my settings. Yeah, we'll do that. That'll work. It's very timely. And he writes this. This is towards the end of the book. And of course, Mark Studdock is a professor who sort of gets roped in because he wants to be part of the crowd. He wants to be part of the in group. He wants to be accepted. And so they rope him in to make him basically a propagandist. And as he goes into the inner circles and as he gets closer into these inner circles, he learns more about what this organization is really up to. The organization is called NICE, N-I-C-E. And there's this scene towards the end of That Hideous Strength that is just so terrifying. And so terrifyingly prophetic. And I don't quote me on this, but Lewis wrote That Hideous Strength. Was it 1941? And what allowed him to think this way? 1945. What was it in Lewis's mind that allowed him to think this deeply about? I mean, he understood sort of modern humanism, I guess, the modern quest. He understood where maybe the Enlightenment would bring us, where sort of modern reductionist thinking would lead us, and he deals with that in Abolition of Man, but then he writes this fiction, and to me, the fiction always sticks with me. But the court says he takes one of the leaders takes Mark into this room where there's a head of a former criminal, Al-Khazan, and it's just the head. It's the disembodied head of this man in the room, and they've engineered it so that the head can still move and function, and it's this terrifying scene in the end of the the end of that hideous strength. And they're having a conversation about what is happening, what is actually happening. So there's this animated head, and it says, but the cortex and the vocal organs in Al-Khazan's head are used by a different mind. And now please attend very carefully. You have probably not heard of macrobes. Microbes, said Mark in bewilderment, but of course. I did not say microbes. I said macrobes. The formation of the word explains itself. Below the level of animal life, we have long known that there are microscopic organisms. The actual result on human life in respect to health and disease have, of course, made up a large part of history. The secret cause was not known until we invented the microscope, so we couldn't see the effect that microbes were having on humanity until we invented a tool for seeing them. Okay, because this takes us right into the conversation of AI and the transhumanist quest. So the microbes were there, but we couldn't see them, and yet their effect on human history was there, just unknown. So go on, said Mark. Ravenous curiosity was moving like a sort of groundswell beneath his conscious determination to stand on guard. I have now to inform you that there are similar organisms, and I thought that this was part of the podcast that I thought was, where Yuval, I'm getting the guy's name wrong. Yuval Noah Harari. When he says that brains and bodies will be products, they will be the kind of products that we trade in. And so he's saying now we have these similar organisms. So similarly, in what he's, like the spiritual world has been removed. There is no spiritual. And so everything is reduced down to a naturalistic explanation. So he calls these macrobes organisms, and he's borrowing from the idea of microbe and just expanding it upward and saying macrobe. So micro, smaller, lower, macro, up above the level of animal life. Now we have, so what he's saying is, now I have to inform you that there are similar organisms above the level of animal life. When I say above, I'm not speaking biologically. The structure of the macrobe, so far as we know it, is of extreme simplicity. When I say that it is above the animal level, I mean that it is more permanent, disposes of more energy, and has greater intelligence. So he's talking about spirits. He's talking about angels. He's talking about the heavenly realm. And there's this hierarchy of being that he's even touching on here. The microbes are below animal life, even though they're animal. And then there are these macrobes above that have a greater intelligence, and those are the angels, fallen angels, demons, spirits, whatever. And so the conversation goes on. I won't read all of this, but again, this is sort of things that were kind of around the conversation of AI and transhumanism, but didn't make it at least into this particular podcast that I released on Monday. So the vocal organs and brain taken from Al-Khazan, that's the head, he continued, have become the conductor of a regular intercourse between the macrobes and our own species. So they've found a way for these macrobes, these spirits, to communicate to humanity, to our species. Now, again, Elon Musk tweeted a picture of their robot, their very Terminator-looking like robot, folding a T-shirt, and I just posted, I hope you wrote in code there so that this robot's not possessed by the fallen spirits or the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, right? There's got to be a switch that says flip this switch in case of demon possession, because there's a conductor now I'm sort of being silly, but at the same time, maybe not. They've become a conductor of regular intercourse between the macrobes and our species. I do not say that we have discovered this technique. The discovery was theirs. So the macrobes were the ones who suggested this path towards communication between macrobes and humanity. Okay? The discovery was theirs and not ours. The circle in which you may be admitted, that's Mark being admitted into this inner circle of people, is the organ of that cooperation between the two species, which has already created a new situation for humanity. The change you will see in humanity is far greater than that which turned the subhuman into the man. How does humanity become God? That is the homo deus. That is the question that I think I'm saying his name, I'm sorry. Harari is saying that we will become God. He even says, that we will be greater than the God of the Bible, because the God of the Bible only created biological life, which of course is not true, but it's a betrayal that he only thinks in the natural world. He doesn't see the spiritual, which is dangerous. That is the plot to that hideous strength. That these and they are sort of, what do I say? They are political forces who come in line with these spiritual forces. But the political forces are not aware that the spiritual forces are the spiritual forces. And so they get sort of trapped into this manipulation and deception. And again, to me, it's sort of like, okay, yawn, we go all the way back to Genesis, and it's the same story. I mean, this is Genesis 3. This is the serpent in the garden. You can become like God. But of course, humanity was made in the image of God. And so we don't need to add anything or do anything to become like God. So that is kind of where, and again, I sort of take these live streams to sort of recap my week. And again, sort of, if you have any questions, if there's anything sort of, again, sort of that was missing, that needs to flesh out the dialogue more, this is where we can do it. So I'm sort of starting with the beginning of my week and working backwards. And so that's kind of the recap of that as best as I can make it. You know what? The other thing, this is so funny too. Let's see. Oh, yeah. I think I got that. I mean, we could look at the Tower of Babel more closely if you want, but here was something funny, because this is on Twitter. This is on. Sometimes these platforms can act like there's some sort of providential force going on. It's like, oh, I'm interested in this topic, and now suddenly I start seeing all this content related to that topic, and that would make sense on YouTube. Within YouTube, like, my feed is populated by the things that YouTube thinks I'm interested in based off of my prior history. Now, I do think some of these platforms do kind of communicate to each other, but the fact that Kale Zeldin posted this on Twitter, this was, I think I had already recorded the podcast, but I was, yo, what's up, bro? Good to see you. Hey, and again, the chat settings, I think, are a little bit weird, so I don't know that I see all the chat, but welcome, Bruza. Hey, how was the snow for you guys up there? Yikes, man. I got like 4 or 5 inches down here. Let me make sure I'm seeing everything. I think I'm seeing it now. Yeah, so I just have things that are just kind of in my way. I need to figure out how to deal with that. It just is what it is. But so I'm making this podcast, right? And I'm obviously I'm watching clips on YouTube, and it's about, humanity's quest for immortality, this sort of transhumanist movement. And Kale posts this. I think it was like the day I was making that podcast, or maybe the day after. For those of you enthused about longevity, science should at least be aware of the curse of Sybil. She asked for eternal life and forgot to ask for eternal youth. That was brilliant. We are seeking eternal youth, and we are forsaking eternal life. Both are traps. And that was just, to me, I'm like, that was a little spooky to see that pop up in my Twitter feed. And I had recorded the main podcast, and I was going to record the intro and the conclusion. So I had recorded the bulk of it, and I wanted to put this quote in the end, and it just didn't fit. So I'm bringing Kale's quote into the live stream here, and that's one of the beauties of sort of picking up the pieces of a previous podcast and creating more conversation. And I just thought that was great, because I do think these guys over in the transhumanist space are that is the trap. I mean, and again, it's sort of like yawn. Yeah, I know we know the story of Genesis 3. It's like it's the same lie sort of repeated over and over again. And so anyway, Kale's quote here I thought was just timely. And then I didn't respond to that one, but all right. So there is that. Now, okay, in the spirit of sort of taking the week backwards, what did I do? So I did that. I did that video, and I guess I'll mention this really quick. So what I'm doing with the members section, and it's like the opportunity is there. Like my channel is set up that there is a member section. I don't have any members. I don't know that that's not necessarily, it's not one of my primary goals right now for this podcast and what I'm doing. But it's there, and I thought about this, and this will take us into some of the conversation around Paul Vanderklay and this little corner and how to use digital media. I'll get to this, but this was our live stream from last week. I mean, I really appreciated you all coming and hanging out and the conversation that was happening. I know it's a little sporadic sometimes when I like read people's chat and follow my own train of thought at the same time. So it is what it is. But so what I thought was this: I actually recorded this episode where I'm looking at the conversation going on Grail Country, that channel, the live stream that they had, and my computer quit on me. Or OBS quit. I'm having some troubles with OBS, and I don't really know what it is. But I had recorded this, and I thought, okay, I'll just sit down. It was just stream of consciousness. It was just like I had listened to the live stream. I had some thoughts that I wanted to share. I was like, you know what, this could make a quick little video, and I went through the whole thing, and then my tech failed. And so when I went to re-record it, it was just like, man, I really don't like this. I really, really liked the first one that I did. I was like, okay, we captured it. That's what I wanted to say. And the thing for me is the tone was what I wanted it to be. And then when you go back over it and you're like, okay, what was I thinking? And then it's rehearsed. And then it sounds rehearsed. And then it's not, and it's an unfortunate kind of balance that I'm trying to deal with, which is I want to be clear in what I'm saying. And so I have an outline to some degree, but often the best stuff is sort of the fill-in stuff that's it's like in between the outline. And I posted a video. Do I dare try to find that? I posted a video and I tagged Paul and Grimm in it because I thought this was really good. He's talking about the creative process. And one of the clips that he shows in there is of a musician who is saying when she sits down and tries to write it, she tries to write an album. She tries to compose the next, whatever triple platinum album that she has. It's always forced, and she never does. And the best songs that she's recorded, the ones that have done the best on the billboards or whatever, are always the songs that she writes when she's not trying to write a song. And it's that thing that C.S. Lewis talks about, how contentment is the only thing that you will never find when you go looking for it. If you look for truth, you look for contentment and truth. It's a great line. You'll just get what is it, like warm socks and wishful thinking. It's like you never find it. And I think the creative process is definitely like that. And so as you engage with other people's content, the best stuff is that sort of first reaction. And this is what I think Paul does so well. Paul Vanderklay, if you don't know Paul's channel, you could look around at mine. I've done a few with his stuff, but he sits down and he records. He's not interested in editing. He's not interested in fluffing it up or making it appealing for YouTube. He's interested in the ideas, and he's interested in the people. And that resonates with me because my project is to see if real meaningful dialogue is possible. And for real meaningful dialogue to be possible, you have to be concerned about the ideas, and you have to be concerned about the people but in their proper balance. And when you sit down to record and you take a segment of somebody's content, you go, okay, here's what's important about this. And then you go, okay, well, that didn't come out right. And you kind of rehearse it in your mind, and then you take another second take at it. And then that didn't come out right, or you misspoke, or you fumbled your words, and then you take another stab at it. And then it becomes rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and then you lose the tone that you originally had when those original thoughts were coming. So I took a big, long explanation to say, in the members section is a rough cut of this podcast. And so you can see that this is an hour and 7 minutes long, but the podcast episode is 48 minutes long. And so there's some, banter, there's some whatever, me being dumb or whatever, probably, and me doing a second take. But my idea around this is if I challenge myself to put it out in like one take, and I make the rough cut sort of available, and that's the point, right? It has to be available in order for it to be sort of like a genuine sort of like artistic expression, right? I don't know, maybe you guys that are poets and playwrights and artists and painters and whatever, let me know what you think about that. But there's always the intent to share it. And if I'm sitting here by myself just rehearsing it, then that's not what I want, ultimately. That's just not what I want to do. So the members section of this channel, and if nobody ever becomes a member, that is totally fine. Like I said, this is not necessarily my goal. What I'm using it for is to put like the rough cut stuff, which is probably a little bit more like this live stream because I can just kind of talk a little bit more. But it's not. But this rough cut is not palatable to the general YouTube audience. Is probably very palatable to like the people in this little corner, the people that are like Paul Vanderklay. They're just like interested in people and ideas, and they want to like, and you can sit through like, like this Grail Country live stream. I think it was like an hour and a half, and I just, I listen to you guys when, I'm getting ready in the morning or something like that, and I can't always jump in. Paul does one on Friday afternoons. Sometimes I can jump in. That's super fun. But you just love. I really love hearing people talk. I guess maybe it's as simple as that. I just love hearing people talk. And since I'm not like in a pub with my friends, I just put in the headphones and listen to Grail Country or Paul Vanderklay or whoever it might be. And so there are people in the YouTube world that can 100% just live with kind of the rough cut stream of consciousness stuff. Then there's a whole nother group of people that I guess maybe I'm trying to engage with those people, and I'm aware of the art form. I'm aware of the platform that I'm on. And so I'm sort of taking that rough cut and making it maybe a little bit more palatable for people that aren't used to a Paul Vanderklay or a Grail Country or some of those sort of like where you really get into really good conversation, but just sort of like nuanced and nitty gritty conversation. So again, I'm taking way too long to explain that there is a rough cut version of this in the members section. So, but that kind of takes me to Grail Country, which is unfortunately the second take. And it was okay, you know, it was all right. Where is this? Yeah. So here it is. I don't know that I have a ton to say about this video, but I don't usually put out 2 videos. I usually put out 1 video a week. And of course, getting comments is huge. And I think one of the things that Luke said was he would rather have more comments than views. And I kind of like, I'm interested in that idea because it's actually because of something Jonathan Peugeot said. And it was actually on the Friday Morning Nameless channel where he clipped it, and I got that, and I've been thinking about that, but and I probably should have, I probably should do a better job of using Twitter to sort of compartmentalize my thoughts here. But it was Peugeot talking about how the edges of the field need to get to the point, Jake says. You know, man, okay, well, your comment was gonna distract me and send me down another rabbit hole. The point is this: the fringes need to be left untended. The fringes need to be left unfinished. And when your community becomes too large, it's hard to do something like Paul does. It's hard to do something like Grail Country does, where you invite random people in, those people that are on the fringes. The surface area of the field is too big, and so the ratio of surface area to edge gets out of balance. And yeah, and so I don't know exactly what I was thinking. Oh, as far as the comments are concerned. So having more comments than views, the desire there is to have a smaller field. Why? Because then I think, and I'm not a mathematician, the area of your field in relation to the edge of your field is maybe a little bit easier to maintain. I think that's what the idea there is. And so there you go. And then actually it was fun because Paul took a clip from my video and used it in one of his videos. I won't do a response because that would just be too. You would have to have watched this video and then watched Paul's video to kind of get it. So I won't bring it up again. But I thought it was cool to hear Paul kind of add some context to even some of my thinking there. So let me check where I am on my thinking here. I'm about half an hour in. We recapped the John Lennox video. We looked at Kale's tweet. Okay, I guess we'll do Justin's tweet because I thought this was fascinating. We're going into a little dream interpretation for anybody that's interested in that stuff. But it has to do with this little corner. And so maybe that's a good segue because this short video that I did on Thursday was very much me talking about digital community, which is the project, I guess, of this little corner, which isn't a thing, which I understand. It's a group. It's for anybody that's like, what are you talking about? It's really a collection of people who are making content. And I think Justin is part of that. As far as I don't know his work as much. I've caught some of his videos, but he even did a documentary, like a short documentary on kind of Paul Vanderklay in this little corner and the sort of quest for genuine community in a digital world. Grim Grizz, one of the people in this little corner, talks about being virtually not alone. And Paul talks about God number one and God number two. And I thought Justin's dream was actually fascinating. And I actually thought it had a lot to do with the conversation about digital community and what we're doing on channels like this. Again, I'm trying to create dialogue. Paul and others, and part of dialogue is community. Paul is trying to create community, and yet, there's challenges. So Justin's dream is this. I had a dream in which I was trying to explain Paul Vanderklay's notion of God number one and God number two, and I won't try, to someone at work who only had about 30 seconds before I had to go. And due to his body language, I could tell he wasn't interested in the conversation, so I quickly searched my mind for a compelling example and said this. I think I can explain it. Here's what it's like. I don't know this. Kurt Vonnegut created a reoccurring character named Kilgore Trout, who appears in multiple novels for him. Well, in one novel, Kilgore gets into such a bind, he worries there's no way out. And so, old Vonnegut decides to write himself into the novel and sit down for a conversation with Kilgore to put his mind at ease. And then, for some reason, the man in my dream, still listening, begins eating mashed potatoes, but in so doing proceeds to get some on his face without noticing. Me. So the Arenic Vonnegut, the author, is the one who lived in New York, smoked cigarettes while typing on his old school typewriter, and created the world in which Kilgore Trout lived. He created the arena in which Kilgore existed, including all the rules and the settings and the events. I considered telling the man about the mashed potatoes, but upon looking closer, he now had mashed potatoes all over his face, even up above his eyes and into his hair. Well, anyway, the agentic Vonnegut is the version of himself that he writes into the story. This was very spooky because of another video that I had just made. This one, the one who becomes an agent within the arena. So the Arenic author and the agentic character in the novel. Arena is the realm of the author. Agent is the realm of the character in the novel. In a scene, reducing himself down or creating a version of himself who can actually exist in such a way that he can interact with Kilgore Trout in pages of the novel. I can't tell if the man is listening as he continues to eat his mashed potatoes, although now appearing to do a better job of getting most of it in his mouth. Just to wrap up, you've got the Arenic god number one, who makes the whole arena, and the agentic god number two, who acts within the arena as the agent. And so it's like, is the man getting smaller? That's like Vonnegut, the author, number one, versus Vonnegut, the character, number two, written by Vonnegut, the author, into the novel. And then I woke up. Okay. So again, a little spooky for me, because I said, this is fascinating. The reason you had this dream, it is the same week I posted a video using the same analogy to explain the ontological argument, the argument of God's existence from the argument of being. And Justin hadn't seen it, but now Paul does talk about Tolkien and Aragorn, and he does use kind of a similar analogy. But then Justin says, yes, but why is the man in my dream eating mashed potatoes? Potatoes are the crop that grows underneath and are unseen until they are ready to become nourishment for the community. This is where Justin's dream becomes a part of what's happening in this little corner, because that idea that I had in my mind was not original as per usual, but actually came from a conversation that Paul was having with Cale Zeldin. And here's what's funny. And I've always listened to people's dreams, and I've always had a good sense of maybe what's going on, like why the person is dreaming that. And I've done some like dream interpretation stuff. I'm not saying that's like a spiritual gift of mine or whatever, but I mean, it is funny that when people tell me their dreams, I'm like, oh, that makes sense because of what you went through here. And I sort of like, for whatever reason, I can kind of see why they're dreaming that way. And I don't know, like, Justin is kind of within this little corner and is familiar with Paul and is familiar with all this stuff. And so maybe there's subconscious is just working all that stuff out. It took me a second to remember this conversation between Paul Vanderklay and Kale, where they talked about the importance of what is underneath. So and I'm not sure I fully understand the conversation, but I think it has to do with why you are dreaming about potatoes. Potatoes getting on someone's face. I think I went, oh, didn't I? I thought I shared this, but my idea was this. If you take Justin's dream, and he's trying to explain something that Paul Vanderklay is sort of like famously reuses, this idea of God number one and God number two. I've never heard anybody else talk like that. And so it's sort of like Paul is very in this, he's like this little corner sort of, I don't know, doesn't revolve around Paul, I guess, but he's very much there. If you remove Paul Vanderklay, I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'm not familiar enough. I'm not an OG, this little corner person. I just found Paul's channel, like, because my brother, Jacob, told me to. And it was, I don't know, 6 months ago. So I could be, and I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to say something that, like, I don't fully understand. But Paul seems to be sort of an essential part of what is this little corner. He's kind of an expression of what's going on in this little corner. And so Justin's dream is about Paul Vanderklay, but it's also about mashed potatoes. And mashed potatoes are a root crop. They struggle through the subsoil and mine nutrients really deep down in the soil. And then they're ready to be food for the community. Now, Paul talks about that when he was talking about this little corner being, oh no, he wasn't talking about this little, he's just talking about why does Jesus find fishermen? Because fishermen are the ones who are not afraid to venture out into the chaotic seas to find a nourishment for the community. And so my thought, because of the conversation we're having about digital media, digital community, how to use digital community, I thought his dream had everything to do with this little corner. And what it is that the mess that this guy is making with the potatoes is the risk that we run in mismanaging that nourishment. Is the risk that we run. It's like, you've got a channel, you've got a YouTube channel, and you want to share and you want to build community, but we're worried about the mismanagement of it. And a lot of the conversations on Grail Country this week, and even Paul, and even some of the stuff that I'm making, even though I would say that I'm a fan of this little corner, I'm new to even understanding it, has been around this little corner and what it is and how to use it and how to be the best stewards of what this thing is. And I think this kind of actually takes me back to the question of AI. Is my whole philosophy around digital media and social media is that if you use it, if you're motivated by the Spirit of God, then I think what you'll create is good. And that was kind of the point that I was trying to, I was using the pond as an example, is that you can infuse the pond with fresh water. You can infuse digital space, the internet, YouTube. You can infuse these social media platforms with the overflow of what you have received in Christ, right? The stream of living water wells up in you. But we don't want to mismanage it. We don't want to be bad stewards of the gifts that God has given us. And so the why is the man in my dream eating mashed potatoes? The question is, why are the mashed potatoes getting all over his face? Because he's not utilizing he's not being a good steward. He's being sloppy about it. He's being inconsiderate of the nourishment that is in front of him. He is not utilizing the gifts well, right? And so that takes us back to our each little channel is somebody with something to share, somebody with some ideas to share. And are we going to share it well? Are we going to utilize it well? That's the question. And I think if the Spirit of God is motivating us, then people's lives will be transformed. If the spirit of mammon is motivating us, and that was this, he's selling a book, so he's motivated to get and Richard Dawkins, the new atheist, all that stuff. I mean, they were making all kinds of money by putting out these books, the God delusion. I mean, it sort of smacks of an insult. Why? To trigger people. Why? To trigger more sales. And we cannot do that. We have to be motivated by the Spirit of God to make genuine connection with real people who have real hurts, who have real questions, and we don't want to be like the guy eating the mashed potatoes and getting them all over our faces. That to me is what Justin's dream is, and it is just so funny. And I mean, again, okay, look, he posted this. How do I see where? Come on, you. Which platform am I on? Okay, this was January 11th. He posted this at 7:40 p.m. And I posted this video 8 days ago. What would that make it? Oh gosh, math is so hard. 16. Oh, it would be the 8th. Wait, hold on. So yeah, okay. So I put out that video on the 8th. He posted this on the 11th, and he hadn't seen my video. That's what's up right there. That's something, because my point, and I'm talking about the ontological argument. This is the argument for God's existence, for God being necessary. And I'm using the J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. Justin is using Kilgore and Vonnegut. Kurt Vonnegut. I'm probably saying that name wrong. Kurt Vonnegut. Paul uses Tolkien and Aragorn. Paul is the only other person that I've heard use that analogy. Now, he's using it to explain God number one and God number two. I'm using it to explain the fact that if we have the idea of God in our mind at all as a necessary being, it's because God has revealed himself to us. Just like the only way little Harry Potter could ever have the idea of J.K. Rowling is if J.K. Rowling revealed herself to Harry Potter. I'm not familiar with this book that Justin is talking about. I'm going to look that up because that would be a much better analogy. And I don't know if you can see it there. Okay, so the whole thing is like this hierarchy of being. Harry Potter lives in the world of Hogwarts that J.K. Rowling created. J.K. Rowling lives in the world of her creator. So there is an author and a hero. And that's what I used. I used the word author and hero. God, the ontological argument, the best way I can understand it, is that God, the author, has written himself into the book that we understand. I mean, we look at the world through a story. So God, the author, has revealed himself into the book as the hero. And I just love that I'm not the hero of this story. That just like alleviates so much pressure, right? God is the hero of this story. Okay, God number one and God number two is the difference between a personal relationship God and the God of sort of Plato, or the sort of the idea, the true, the good, the beautiful, the idea of God. And so I'm using that same analogy, but I'm talking about a different thing. I'm talking about the ontological argument. God is a necessary being. If you can conceive of a world where God is a necessary being, then God as a necessary being must exist. I'm like, whoa, wait, hold on. That sounds so circular of an argument. And so if you take the four classical arguments for God's existence, I've always strayed away from the ontological one because it just sounded so weird to me until this idea became clear. That God is the author and the hero of the story. It's like the only way I, as a character in this story, have a concept of God is that God has revealed himself to us. The only way a finite mind could have an idea of an infinite God as an actual infinite is if God reveals himself to us. So, yeah, thank you. Well, I appreciate it. Hey, Sherlock, I like that name. Okay. So that's kind of, I think that's a recap of the week. It's also funny that we've got another little appearance here from this little corner talking about AI the same week that I'm making a video dealing with transhumanism and their use of AI and their quest for immortality. I won't necessarily go into this one, but actually I didn't repost it. Maybe I should just repost it. I bookmarked it so I could have it here for my live stream. But Sam. Okay, yeah. So it's funny because Sam shows up in Paul's streams. That's where I know Sam from, and here he is. And there's a few others in this little corner that are dealing with AI, mostly not working. Is dealing with that as well. And it's something that I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about, except the fact that we're sort of back here in our Tower of Babel, and we're all speaking the same language. We're all... There's something to this, right? And so let me know, because this was the part of the video. It was at the very end, and I said, I need some help interpreting this. It's right here. All the way at like minute 45, and I'm asking for your help. So if you haven't watched this video, John Lennox ends the transhumanist. Hey, how do we spell transhumanism? By the way, I've seen it spelled a few other. But yeah, maybe I should change this title. That sounds very YouTube clickbaity, but I thought it was fun because he really does. He just basically says, guys, you're too late. The quest for immortality was solved by Jesus 2,000 years ago. So it's like your desire is right, but you're just too late. And so I talk about this a little bit more at the end of this, but I could use some help on the Tower of Babel, because this thing, I've done a couple videos on it, and it gets stuck in my head. There's something going on here that is more than just the Sunday school answer, the Sunday school of like, oh, it's man's pride, and actually, where was it? I just got a notification. It must be on this other video. Was it? No, it is on this video.
I'm gonna give you my number.
Shoot, sorry guys. Comments, load the comments. Somebody pointed out that the word for Babel is sort of a it could be a double meaning there. And so, darn it, I wish I had that comment. Sorry. Yeah. Why are my comments not loading? That feels bad. Something. Oh, there it is. Okay. Lovely. Okay. Whew. Emily, thank you. Let me see if I can. Okay. I have a question for you. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. The etymologies are so much fun to research, and it's true. In particularly in the Hebrew of the Old Testament, these guys are like ninja wordsmiths. Often pointing to deeper meaning in the narrative and clearly a source of narrative inspiration. This is what I like about making videos. It's like I get to hear other people's thoughts here, which is why the biblical explanation given for Babel is kind of a head scratcher. Apparently the writer or the redactor were drawing on a connection between the word Balal, to confound or confuse, to make the exegetical point about the languages being confused, were they being creative and taking a little bit license? Because Babel derives from the Akkadian Babilu, which means the gate of the gods. And it could be a case of biblical trash talk, polemicizing against the cultic activities that were typically carried out in these ziggurats. Perhaps their idea of unity was to side and unite with the rebellious angels with whom they would commune and mix themselves via elaborate rituals. Isn't that what we are doing with this transhumanist quest? Aren't we? Yeah, they are like ninja wordsmiths. Because I think so. I think that is kind of they're pulling from all these different words and these different meanings to confuse at the gate of the gods. So once you come to that threshold, humanity, of trying to become like God, that is where you self-destruct. That is where you become confused. And that again is just C.S. Lewis. The chief accomplishment of humanity will be the abolition of man. Unless we're united with the Spirit of God, unless we're motivated by the desires that He has given us, our humanistic desires will always lead us down this path of Babel, will always lead us down this path of self-destruction. So yes, right at the gate of the gods is the place of the most confusion. I mean, what are we experiencing today? And isn't that true? The Spirit of God is the one who is the helper, who will help you discern, who will lead you into all truth in a world of deception. There's something here, right? Like, I just feel like we're recreating this Tower of Babel scene as we attempt immortality, as we attempt, and even, I mean, the book that Harari put out is called Homo Deus, the God Man, which is so funny because they don't believe in God, and yet they've rejected God, just like Nimrod, in earlier on. His name means to set against. This is another one of those sort of double meanings, I think. His name could mean rebellion. Okay, so Nimrod's name can mean rebellion, and this mighty hunter before the Lord, he's a mighty hunter before the Lord, could mean in defiance of, in the face of. And you don't stare the king in the face, right? You don't go up to the king and go face to face. That's an act of defiance. And you go to the king and you go in humility and you bow. That's the idea. Nimrod is not one to come and before Yahweh and bow before Yahweh. And so there's something here in Genesis 11, and I'm still working on it. I'm still unpacking it. So any thoughts that you have, hit me up. I am going to call it. We've been going for about an hour, and that's probably as much. I don't know that I made a ton of sense to begin with, but that's about as long as I have before I start really not making sense. And so, I mean, with that, I would just say, man, let's continue the conversation, Genesis chapter 11, and the kind of transhumanist quest for infinite knowledge, which I guess is Genesis 3, and immortality, which again is Genesis 3, because God prevents us from eating from the tree of eternal life. And we've always tried to get back there. But of course, what John Lennox says in this interview, which I thought was just so brilliant, and I hope that he gets invited onto Joe Rogan, is that Jesus has solved that. There is a path to immortality and eternal life, and it's through Christ. And so thanks for being here. Thanks for checking out the live stream. I will be back next week. I think we're going to be doing another